Hello, noble families and students. I hope you are well. It is March 31st, 2020. Today's video, I'm going to be going over reading chapters 7 and 8 of Charlotte's Web. We're also going to go over the answers to day 6 math page and also do a quick short lesson on quoting text. So, if you were paying attention to the news at all today, you will have noticed that our governor, Mr. Mike DeWine, decided to extend the closing of our school buildings until at least May 1st, which is a Friday, and this is the tweet that he sent out regarding this. So in the message that I'm going to send on Tuesday, I'm going to talk about what's going to be happening over the next month, as obviously we're going to be doing more remote learning and not just optional work at that point, but now work that's going to become mandatory and for a grade. So we're going to talk about that and what exactly that's going to look like. So I will be sending that message out with this video attached to it. So we will be doing I will be giving some work for your scholars to do in both math and reading, possibly science and social studies, for them to do for a grade. It's going to be something daily for them to do. It's going to be light, but it's going to be something that we expect that gets done, so there's learning taking place. So it should take them about 30 to 45 minutes for both subjects. Obviously, much shorter than an actual school day, but still something they can do, as well as they're going to receive some assignments in their specials classes, probably about one assignment a week per class. So just be looking for information on that, and please let me know if you don't have internet access at home, but you're still able to watch this video and you do see this. Please let me know if you don't have internet access so we can figure out ways to get you the work that's going to need to be done. I plan on continuing to try to do YouTube videos. Also, I will be reaching out to you via my cell phone, probably using a Google Voice app to contact you, and so you can contact me if you want. As well as, we can do Zoom meetings. Zoom is a program where I can talk to your scholars via video in real time, things like that. So please keep paying attention for those daily messages in Google Classroom. We're going to continue to use Google Classroom, so make sure you keep up on that. As far as Google Classroom, you can now access it through your Scholars Clever account, so it's the first one here. Obviously, you still have your options of doing extra math, Study Island, and there's some other things we're going to talk about and add as we go along, some extra things your scholar can do. So I just want to keep you updated on that. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask me those questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. I don't have all the answers, but one of the things that came out today is also that we're not going to be taking our state tests. So as far as third graders being promoted to fourth grade, unless there's a major concern from myself or you or Mrs. Prislak, our assistant principal of education for kindergarten through fourth grade, then your scholar is going to be moving on to fourth grade, and we will reach out to you if we do have a major concern about possibly holding someone back. But let's go ahead and get into the video. I'm going to read chapters 7 and 8 of Charlotte's Web today because they are rather short, so only about 7 pages in all between the two chapters. So, Chapter 7, Bad News. Wilbur liked Charlotte better and better each day. Her campaign against insects seemed sensible and useful. Hardly anybody around the farm had a good word to say for a fly. Flies spent their time pestering others. The cows hated them, the horses detested them, the sheep loathed them. Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman were always complaining about them and putting up screens. Wilbur admired the way Charlotte managed. He was particularly glad that she always put her victim to sleep before eating it. "It's real thoughtful of you to do that, Charlotte," he said. "Yes," she replied in her sweet musical voice. "I always give them an anesthetic so they won't feel pain. It's a little service I throw in." As the days went by, Wilbur grew and grew. He ate 3 big meals a day. He spent long hours lying on his side, half asleep, dreaming pleasant dreams. He enjoyed good health, and he gained a lot of weight. One afternoon, when Fern was sitting on her stool, the oldest sheep walked into the barn and stopped to pay a call on Wilbur. "Hello," she said. "Seems to me you're putting on weight." "Yes, I guess I am," replied Wilbur. "At my age, it's a good idea to keep gaining." "Just the same, I don't envy you," said the old sheep. "You know why they're fattening you up, don't you?" "No," said Wilbur. "Well, I don't like to spread bad news," said the sheep, "but they're fattening you up because they're going to kill you, that's why." "They're going to what?" screamed Wilbur. Fern grew rigid on her stool. Kill you. Turn you into smoked bacon and ham, continued the old sheep. Almost all young pigs get murdered by the farmer as soon as the real cold weather sets in. There's a regular conspiracy around here to kill you at Christmas time. Everyone is in the plot. Lurvy, Zuckerman, even John Arable. Mr. Arable? Sobbed Wilbur. Fern's father? Certainly. When a pig is to be butchered, everybody helps. I'm an old sheep, and I see the same thing. Same old business, year after year. Arable arrives with his .22, shoots the... Stop! Screamed Wilbur. I don't want to die. Save me, somebody, save me. Fern was just about to jump up when a voice was heard. Be quiet, Wilbur, said Charlotte, who had been listening to this awful conversation. I can't be quiet, screamed Wilbur, racing up and down. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to die. Is it true what the old sheep says, Charlotte? Is it true they are going to kill me when the cold weather comes? Well, said the spider, plucking thoughtfully at her web, the old sheep has been around this barn a long time. She has seen many a spring pig come and go. If she says they plan to kill you, I'm sure it's true. It's also the dirtiest trick I've ever heard of. What people don't think of. Wilbur burst into tears. I don't want to die, he moaned. I want to stay alive right here in my comfortable manure pile with all my friends. I want to breathe the beautiful air and lie in the beautiful sun. You're certainly making a beautiful noise, snapped the old sheep. I don't want to die, screamed Wilbur, throwing himself to the ground. You shall not die, said Charlotte briskly. What? Really? Cried Wilbur. Who's going to save me? I am, said Charlotte. How? Asked Wilbur. That remains to be seen, but I am going to save you, and I want you to quiet down immediately. You're carrying on in a childish way. Stop your crying. I can't stand hysterics. On to Chapter 8. A Talk at Home. On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arable and Fern were sitting at the breakfast in the kitchen. Avery had finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. Did you know that Uncle Homer's goslings had hatched? Asked Fern. How many? Asked Mr. Arable. 7, replied Fern. There were 8 eggs, but one didn't hatch, and the goose told Templeton she didn't want it anymore, so he took it away. The goose did what? Asked Mr. Arable, gazing at her daughter with a queer, worried look. Told Templeton she didn't want the egg anymore, repeated Fern. Who is Templeton? Asked Mrs. Arable. He's the rat, replied Fern. None of us like him much. Who's us? Asked Mrs. Arable. Oh, everybody in the barn cellar. Wilbur, and the sheep, and the lambs, and the goose, and the gander, and the goslings, and Charlotte, and me. Charlotte, said Mrs. Arable. Who's Charlotte? She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever. What does she look like? Asked Mrs. Arable. Well, said Fern thoughtfully. She has 8 legs. All spiders do, I guess. Charlotte is a spider? Asked Fern's mother. Fern nodded. A big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood. Wilbur adores her. Does he really? Said Mrs. Arable, rather vaguely. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression on her face. Oh, yes, Wilbur adores Charlotte, said Fern. Do you know what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched? I haven't the faintest idea, said Mr. Arable. Tell us. Well, when the first gosling stuck its head out from under the goose, I was sitting on my stool in the corner and Charlotte was on her web. She made a speech. She said, I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be grateful to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it. Don't you think that was a pleasant thing for her to say? Yes, I do, said Mrs. Arable. And now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school. And tell Avery to get ready. And this afternoon, you can tell me more about what goes on in Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there almost every afternoon, don't you? I like it there, replied Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs. After she had left the room, Mrs. Arable spoke in a low voice to her husband. I worry about Fern, she said. Did you hear the way she rambled on about the animals pretending they talked? Mr. Arable chuckled. Maybe they do talk, he said. I've sometimes wondered. At any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's got a lively imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things. Just the same, I do worry about her, replied Mrs. Arable. I think I shall ask Dr. Dorian about her the next time I see him. He loves Fern almost as much as we do, and I want him to know how queerly she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well animals don't talk. Mr. Arable grinned. Maybe our ears aren't as sharp as Fern's, he said. And that's the end of Chapter 8. So I will read Chapter 9 in tomorrow's video. So some things happening here, obviously with Wilbur learning that he's possibly going to be killed, and Fern telling Mr. and Mrs. Arable about what she's hearing in the barn. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Day 6's math page that we were supposed to do. So let me go ahead and get this loaded up. Day 6. So, this is on perimeter, which I went over in a previous video. So you're supposed to use a ruler to find the perimeter. I know one of our scholars said he didn't have a ruler to use, and that's okay. If you don't have a ruler, you can always just guesstimate, just take a guess. The important thing is to remember that to find perimeter, this word right here, what we want to do is we want to add all of the sides together. So just taking a look at this shape, the first one's done for us. We have 4, 3, 3, and 2 equals 12. I'm looking at this side. It's definitely longer than 4, but not super long. We're going to go with 6. Now we have two very short sides here. I would say those are about 1 centimeter long. We have another pretty short side, but a little bit longer than these. I would say 2. Okay, and this side right here looks to be about as long as our first side. Let's say that one is also 6. Okay, so adding those together, 6 plus 6 gives us 12. Plus 2 more gives us 14, 15, 16. Our perimeter would be 16. If you use different numbers, then you might get a different answer. But the important thing is to know how to add those sides together to get a perimeter. All right, Evan has a square sticker that measures 5 inches on each side. What is the perimeter of the sticker? So he's got a square sticker, 5 inches on each side. So each side is 5. And if it's a square, we have 4 sides. We could do a multiplication or addition problem to solve this. Doing it the quick way, 5 times 4 sides is going to give me an answer of 20 inches. Okay, number 4. Sophie draws a shape that has 6 sides. So first thing I would do is draw a shape with 6 sides. So something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each side is 3 centimeters. So I know each one of these sides is going to be 3. I won't do them all, but again, we can use a multiplication problem to solve here. We have 6 sides times 3 centimeters each. We'll do 3 times 6, and we get an answer of 18 centimeters for the perimeter. Draw 2 different figures that each have a perimeter of 20 units. So what they want you to do here is just draw some shapes that give us an answer of 20 units. So kind of like this shape right here. Okay, so thinking of some shapes, let's draw a rectangle here, and if I wanted to equal 20, I could go with a side of maybe 3, and 3 would give me 6, and 7 would give me 14. 14 plus 6 gives me 20. So you just kind of have to think here, test it out. Another one we could do is we could draw a pentagon. Okay, not the best pentagon I've ever drawn in my life, but 5 sides. If each side is 4 units long, 5 times 4 gives us 20. There's another example. Okay, and you could have even just went crazy with your shapes here. We could have drawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you could have said, all these sides are the same length. They're all 2. 10 times 2 gives us 20. So just making sure your shape looks like it's got about the same length of sides is good. Obviously this one is different, but it's still equal to 20. Okay. Go to the back here. So you were supposed to use an inch ruler for this question. So again, if you didn't have an inch ruler, just taking a guess. All right. Tie cut a label the size of the shape shown. What is the perimeter in inches of Ty's label? So again, just taking a guess. Maybe we say, you know what? This is 2. This is 2. And these are 6. Again, if I don't have an inch ruler, just take a guess. The important thing that you want your scholar to know is that we want to add the sides to find the perimeter. Okay? So 6 plus 6 is 12. 2 plus 2 is 4. 12 plus 4 is 16. Inches because it's in inches. All right, this is a square, so obviously all the sides are going to be the same. So maybe we're going with, well, this is sides pretty much match up. We're going to say they're all 6. Okay, 4 times 6, 24 inches. All right, and some review here. What is the perimeter of the shape below? So again, counting the units as you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Remember, you can count them like that as you go, or you could just count how many and then add all the sides. Okay? Vince arrives for his trumpet lesson after school at the time shown on the clock. What time does Vince arrive for his trumpet lesson? So his hour hand here is in between the 3 and the 4, so it's going to be 3 something. And his minute hand is after the 5. Looks like one tick after the 5, so counting by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and one more tick give us 26. Okay? Matthew's small fish tank holds 12 liters. His large fish tank holds 25 liters. How many more? Important words there. Liters does his large fish tank hold. So how many more means we need to subtract 25. Minus 12 gives you an answer of 13. Writing less than, greater than, equal to. This is a place where we can eliminate one of those answers. Obviously, they're not equal. 1/6 and 1/4. We want to look at these bottom numbers, the 6 and the 4. So, figure out which one is bigger. I want to look for the one with the smaller denominator. So 4 is going to be 1/4 of something, 1/4 of a pie. You're getting 1 of 4 pieces. 1/6 of the pie, you're getting 1 of 6 pieces. There's more pieces here, but you're going to be getting less of that pie because there are more pieces to choose from. So 1/6 is less than 1/4. All right, let's go ahead and close that out. And a quick lesson here over quoting text. So asking and answering questions. I can quote the text as evidence to support my inferences. What is an inference? Well, an inference is when we read a story and they don't tell us exactly what happened, but we can figure out what happened based off of what we read. So an example that I always used in class was, if I told you this thing, could you tell me what's happening, where they're at? So Jimmy pitched the ball to Susie. Susie hit the ball with her bat out of the park for a home run. I didn't tell you what sport they were playing, but you can tell me, based off of what I just told you, what sport they're playing. Okay? That's drawing conclusions or making inferences. Okay? Let's get started. Imagine you are a detective and called to the scene of a crime. When you arrive at the scene, you notice the windows are smashed and objects are thrown all over the floor. Immediately you think it must be the same person who robbed the store down the block. What do you do next? Okay? What would you do? You would look for the evidence, right? You would refer to the evidence to prove their points when trying to solve a case. Okay? So, if you think this person, the same one that robbed the store down the block, you're gonna look for evidence that's gonna match up, right? Okay. Quoting the text. Similar to a detective, when answering questions about a text, good readers quote the text as evidence to support their inferences or answers. When quoting the text word for word, it is important to use quotation marks. We practice using those a lot. To give credit to the author of the text. If you are writing details in your own words, you do not need to use quotation marks. Quotation marks. So using quotation marks. Using quotation marks when quoting the text word for word to support your inference or answer. Put the quotation marks around the beginning and end of the quote. So, Ben is a good friend because he always listens and is supportive of Riley's decision. For example, the author states, so remember we use things like on page 41 it says, or in the paragraph it says, or in the text it says. Okay? Here, they say, for example, the author states, and then they put their quotation mark. And remember, the first word of your quote needs to have a capital letter. So this W is capitalized even though it's not the first word of the sentence. It's the first word of the quote, though. So when Ben knew that Riley was unhappy at her job, he helped her search for places that were hiring. Then they put the period, and then quotation marks at the end, outside of the period. Okay? Here it says, any quote that is a complete sentence should start with a capital letter. Don't forget your capital letters. All right, introducing a quote. So here are some examples like I just talked about. So, when getting ready to introduce a quote, use a sentence starter. Sentence starters can be, the author states, or I think blank because in the text it says, or according to the text, or the narrator states, or on page blank the text states, or the text says, or an example is, or for example, in the text it states. Okay, lots of ways that you can start your sentence, your quote. Okay, these are just a few examples. So, use a sentence starter and then a comma to introduce a quote. Put quotation marks at the beginning and end of the quote. Example, I think Riley is appreciative of Ben's actions. According to the text, comma, quotation mark, Riley smiled and gave Ben a big hug. Period, then quotation mark. Correctly quoting from the text. It wasn't that Christina disliked helping people, it was just that so many people asked her for help all the time. For example, before school on Monday, she helped her little sister get dressed and then packed her lunch. At school, Mr. Watson asked her to collect the other kids' homework and wash the chalkboards. After dinner, she had helped Mama by clearing the table and washing the dishes. Then she spent nearly 2 hours on her own homework. Christina always did whatever people asked, and she never complained. But she did sometimes wish for a whole day to herself. So how did Christina feel about helping others? Well, Christina felt frustrated. Did it say in the text that she felt frustrated? No, it didn't. But we know that she's frustrated because of some of the sentences. So she did sometimes wish for a whole day to herself. Okay? And it was just that so many people asked her for help all the time. Okay? And then they're going to give these examples. An example is, it was just that so many people asked her for help all the time. The text also states, but she did sometimes wish for a whole day to herself. So those are two examples of how we know Christina is frustrated. Okay, which example is written correctly? Explain. So example 1. Christina is a very kind girl. She dedicates her time to help the people around her. The text states, before Monday, she helped her little sister get dressed and then packed her lunch. Additionally, the author states, after dinner, she helped Mama by clearing the table and washing the dishes. Okay, example 2, I think, is going to say exactly the same thing. So what mistakes did or made here? Which example is wrong? I'll give you a second to think about it here. Remember, our quote needs to have capital letters. We need to have quotation marks in the correct place. We need to have a comma before the quote. So, if you take a look at which one? Which one is incorrect? The answer is example 1. So, in example 1, the first word of the quote and before the letter is not capitalized. Let me make this a little bit smaller here. I'm going to go ahead and erase that. Try this again. So the B is not capitalized. Okay? The rest of the sentence looks good, but when we get to, additionally, the author states, I forgot quotation marks. The beginning and end of the quote. Okay? There's the mistake they made. All right, finding supporting evidence. So, thinking of others, Mariah was not a mean person, but she was a rather spoiled person. She had no brothers and sisters, and she had always gotten whatever she wanted. Her father often cooked her favorite meals. She usually did her favorite things on the weekend, and she never had to share anything. Then Mariah spent a summer at camp. She learned to ride horses, paint, and she made new friends. She learned that sometimes the meal you got was not your favorite. She learned that she had to share things with others and think about other people. When Mariah got home, her father asked her what she would like for dinner. This is a mistake. Should say dinner, not diner. What's your favorite meal? Mariah asked. Mariah's father said it was barbecue chicken. Then let's have barbecue chicken tonight, Mariah said. So highlight details to support the inference Mariah learned to be more thoughtful of others. So what are some things that tell us that Mariah learned to be more thoughtful? Okay, think about it. Which of these tells us that she was thoughtful? So, what we're looking for here is the sentence where Mariah asks her father what his favorite meal is. Okay? She became thoughtful. She thought about what does he want, not what do I want. Okay? And there it is. She learned that sometimes the meal that you got was not your favorite. And that she had to share things with other people and think about other people. What's your favorite meal? Okay, so we also could have add. She learned sometimes the meal not your favorite. She had to share. And here's an example of how she learned that. All right, So quoting that, write a response and quote accurately from the text to support the idea that Mariah learned to be more thoughtful of others. Include at least 2 details. So we can include details from this. So it would look something like this. Oops. Oops. Making mistakes here. Sorry. There we go. So, something might sound like something like this. Mariah learned to be more thoughtful of others. Notice how I'm using this right here. Mariah learned to be more thoughtful of others. In the text it says, she learned that sometimes the meal you got was not your favorite. The text also says, she learned that she had to share things with others and think about other people. Yeah, that's what a sentence could sound like. I'm going to skip through this here. All right, so let's do a couple questions here. True or false? Writers must quote every time they are referring to details from the text as supporting evidence. Do we have to always use quotation marks? True or false? Think about it. The answer is false. We do not always need to quote. We only are going to quote, okay, when we are copying the words from the story. If we use our own words, we do not need to use quotation marks. When copying the text word for word, writers must use quotation marks around the direct quote. So when copying the text, do we use quotation marks? Yes. Quotation marks go before and after the quote. Do we put the quotation marks before and after the quote? Absolutely. Question 4. Writers must use a comma after the sentence starter to introduce the quote. So you must use a comma after the sentence starter. Remember, a sentence starter is something like, in paragraph 3, it says. Do we put a comma after that? Yes, we do. If quoting a whole sentence from the text, writers must start the sentence with a capital letter. So if we write a whole sentence, not just part of the sentence, do we have to use a capital letter to start the quote? Yes. Quoting details from the text gives the author credit for his or her writing. So if we put quotation marks and we quote the details from the text, does it give the author credit for what they wrote? Absolutely. All right. Choose the example that shows accurate quoting from the text. Mary is a bully because she taunts other students. According to the text, Mary called Michael over and knocked the books out of his hands. According to the text, Mary called Michael over and knocked the books out of his hands. Mary called Michael over and knocked the books out of his hands. Or, according to the text, Mary called Michael over and knocked the books out of his hands. Which one is correct? So I notice in sentence A, I don't have a comma. Sentence B does have a comma. Sentence C has no sentence starter. Okay? And D does not have a comma either. So I already know that A and C and D are wrong. I eliminated all the answers that I need to before I even looked at the rest of the sentence. Okay, I'll check letter B out. So it does have a comma. It has quotation marks. It has a capital letter. It has a period and another set of quotation marks. We're choosing letter B. Michael is passive because he is afraid and just lets Mary bully him. In the text, it states, comma, quotation mark, Michael just took it quietly and waited for the unpleasant moment to pass. Okay, looking at letter A, did we think it's correct? Looks pretty good to me. All right, we'll check the other answers. No quotation marks here. No sentence starter. No quotation marks, so we know it's letter A. And last question. Kenny is a good person because he sticks up for Michael. The author states, nope, no comma. The author states, no comma. The author states, comma, when Kenny walked through the door, he saw Michael trembling in fear and headed straight toward him. Or D, when Kenny, no sentence starter here. So letter C. And we're going to stop right there. This is about a 30-minute video. So thank you for tuning in. And remember that starting next week, we're going to be doing actual assignments that are going to be graded, lightly graded, but We do want to continue on with our learning for the next month at least. So thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys who are checking in daily. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. And I hope you guys have a great day, Mr. Koblenz. See ya.